13th Sunday in Ordinary Time. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. When Jesus had crossed in the boat to the other side, a great crowd gathered around him, and he was by the sea. Then one of the synagogue leaders, named Jairus, came, and he saw Jesus. He fell at his feet and begged him repeatedly, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Come, lay your hands on her, so that she may live and made well." So Jesus went with him, and a large crowd followed him and pressed in on him. Now there was a woman who had been suffering from a hemorrhage for 12 years. She had endured much under many physicians and had spent all that she had, and she was no better, but rather grew worse. She had heard about Jesus and came up behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, for she said, "If I but touch his clothes, I will be made well." Immediately her hemorrhage stopped, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her disease. Immediately aware that the power had gone out forth from him, Jesus turned about in the crowd and said, "Who touched my clothes?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the crowd pressing in on you. How can you say, 'Who touched me?'" He looked all around to see who had done it. But the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came in fear and trembling, fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. Jesus said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." While Jesus was still speaking, some people came from the leader's house to say, "Your daughter is dead. Why trouble the teacher any further?" But overhearing what they said, Jesus said to the leader of the synagogue, "Do not fear, only believe." Jesus allowed no one to follow him. And when they came to the house of the leader of the synagogue, he saw a commotion, people weeping and wailing loudly. When he had entered, he said to them, "Why do you make a commotion and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. Then Jesus put them all outside, and he took the child's father and mother and those who were with them and went in where the child was. He took her by the hand and said to her, "Talitha kum," which means, "Little girl, get up." And immediately the girl got up and began to walk about, for she was 12 years of age. At this they were overcome with amazement. He strictly ordered them that no one should know this, and told them to give her something to eat. The Gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. The head of the church, Jairus, approaches Jesus on behalf of his daughter. She is sick. She's very sick. We're not told her name. We only know that she is beloved. She's someone's daughter, and she belongs. Another character emerges. She also approaches Jesus, but she does so on her own volition. She has no one to advocate for her. She too is sick, very sick. We're not told her name, only her identity. She is woman. It's generic. She does not belong. The young girl has protection, advocates, loving parents. The woman does not. And being alone in the ancient world is like being without identity. Moreover, illness always has its consequences, and in the case of the woman, her hemorrhaging renders her unclean. She's not to be touched, and she is not to touch others. In fact, she's not even supposed to be in public. Laws explicit to her condition dictate she's not to be around other people. But with some sort of tenacity that we should be envious of, perhaps even stand in applause, she risks everything to reach out to Christ. And after 12 painful years of hoping, followed by 12 painful years of disappointment, the young rabbi from Nazareth is her last hope. And miracles of miracles, this time she's made well. A word about the Mosaic Law. The law was not intended to harm people. On the contrary, it was written to protect. In the ancient world, people didn't recover from disease. They got worse. There was no coming back once you contracted a disease. Isolation was the only means of protection. But Christ changes all of that. He doesn't succumb to disease, he overcomes it. He isn't made unclean by others, he makes them clean. And from this point forward, Christians approach life and death with courage. So the woman is healed, as is the daughter. But the woman's healing is not limited to her physicality. It penetrates the psychosocial too. When the woman's bleeding stops, so does her shame and her ostracization and her isolation. She's permitted back into society. Christ has given her life back. And it's confirmed by her new name. No longer is she called woman, generic. Instead, Jesus calls her daughter, beloved. Faithful of St. Anne's, when all else fails and you find yourself in the most desperate of circumstances, reach out to Christ. Risk reaching out to Christ. Touch the hem of his cloak and know you will never be turned away, but embraced and made well.